One.
Oh. Hey there, Raiders! Happy World Read Aloud Day. Today we join millions of readers and writers in over 170 countries, and we celebrate our freedom to read and write. And today we have a very special treat for you.
Today, Raiders, we have a very special guest, Miss Lorien Lawrence. She is a writer, middle school English teacher. Ha ha ha. So let me give you 5 fun facts about Miss Lawrence. She pitched her first novel at 8 years old to James Howe. Lived in England for a few years. Fish and chips, we got to talk about that. First name comes from the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Didn't know that, huh? So her first name is pronounced Lorien. Astrology, Cancer. Cancer, Sun, Taurus, Moon. Has an unhealthy obsession with iced tea, vampires, and all things Disney. And on that note, Miss All Things Disney, take it away.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to hang out with you on World Read Aloud Day. Your lovely teacher's right. I am a 7th grade English teacher from Connecticut. I am not in my classroom. This is my home office, but normally I am with my lovely students, and we have a lot of fun. So I'm excited to talk about books with you, specifically my books. I tend to write spooky, scary stories. That's my wheelhouse. That's what I grew up loving, reading, and what I love to write. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my series and the book I have coming out next year, and then I'll read to you a little bit from the Stitchers. And if we have time, I would love to have any questions that you have. And if I don't get to answer everybody's question, then your teachers are welcome to email me any follow-up questions. I always respond to that, and I also respond to the contact page on my website. So don't fear if you have something to ask me and we don't get to it. But I'm the author of the Fright Watch series. The first book is called The Stitchers, and this is the one I'll read to you a little bit from. So you can see the cover. That's the main character, Quinn. Nope, that's Quinn. And then that's Mike. He's her sidekick, but he would not like me saying that. He actually takes offense to that, but he kind of is. They're neighbors. They also kind of have a crush on each other, but they don't want to admit that yet, at least not in this book. They are athletes. They're on the track team. They're really, really good. They kind of have the same friend group. They tend to bicker a lot, but in like a playful way. The one thing that they do agree on, though, is that something weird is up with their other neighbors. So the neighbors that live across the street. They call them the oldies because they're old, but they don't seem to age. And they keep I don't know, it's like they keep seeming to upgrade. So, for example, Miss B, like the leader of the oldies, one day her face will be completely bandaged, and then the next day it's off and there's no scars or any signs that she had surgery. Her face is just completely like taut and plasticky. Another one of the oldies, Mr. Brown, his leg is like all bandaged up and he's limping for weeks. And then one day he's sprinting faster than Quinn and Mike. So Mike is very science-minded, and he's like, no, there's an explanation for this. It must be surgery or plastic surgery or Botox or supplements, or maybe they're just really fit and have good genes. Like, he's thinking something logical. Whereas Quinn is like, no, I think it's something more than that. I think there's something supernatural going on. And so they make a bet for a month's worth of milkshakes at this really good ice cream shop in town. And to see who is right or who's closer to the truth. And so they decide to investigate, and they end up uncovering the truth. And this book is the only one in the series that's actually a mystery. So I'm not going to tell you what they find out or what the oldies are. I'm going to leave that up to you to read and find out, but it's way worse than what they thought. So this is the first in the series. This is from the end of their 7th grade year through like the 4th of July. So like beginning of summer, end of what would be the Connecticut school year. I feel like in Texas, you get out a lot earlier than us maybe. But we usually get out the very end of June. So this is the end of the school year. The Collector's Book 2 picks up pretty much right where the Stitchers leaves off. So this is now the fall. It's the start of their 8th grade year. Quinn and Mike are in it again. You could see them there sneaking around a graveyard. Quinn is our voice, is our protagonist. Mike is also along for the ride. This book's not a mystery. You can tell from the cover. This is my ghost story, my ghost kind of cult story. So there's this urban legend in Connecticut that I know you have a version of in Texas, because someone else told me today, of the lady in white. So like a woman who wears all white and she kind of stands at the edge of a graveyard and she beckons or tries to lure drivers or passersby over to her. And I've always been really interested in that. And there's a cemetery that I pass every day on my way to work that is really infamous around here for having these sightings of this lady in white. And I decided to kind of make it so that not only is it a lady in white, but she has collected many others to join her crew, and they are looking to maybe recruit another. So Quinn and Mike are still really traumatized by everything that's happened in book 1, but now they have to figure out how to stop these ladies in white. So that's book 2. That's my ghost story. Book 3 is part of the series, but it's actually a companion. So Quinn and Mike are in it. You see them right there. However, they're not the star. This time, both of them are the sidekicks. The main character is, I'm trying to figure out my screen. There she is. Marion. She's a 14-year-old monster maker. So she wants to work in the movies. She wants to do special effects, makeup, all of that stuff. She practices out of her bedroom. She has a social anxiety disorder, so she doesn't get out much. She doesn't like to put herself out there socially. It makes her feel really anxious. However, Halloween is her time to shine, because that is when all the kids at school come to her and they pay her to do their Halloween makeups. So they're all coming to her house the night of this huge Halloween dance that she's definitely not going to. However, her crush Tyler comes over to interview her for the school paper. As he's there, he takes this sea creature mask. You can see it there, that Marion's been working on, and he puts it on and he goes to the dance and it transforms him into the sea creature. So this like black ink starts shooting out of his mouth and paralyzing people as they're dancing, and he's able to control the waves that are behind them on the other side of the building. So Marion, even though she wants nothing to do with this dance, she wants nothing to do with what's happening, she has to be brave, go to this dance, team up with Quinn and Mike, and try to figure out how to stop it. So right now, this is the last one in the series. I'm not sure if there will be more. I've left it open so that I can add more to the series if there seems to be a watch for it. So that's Fright Watch. The next book I have coming out next year is called The Many Hauntings of the Manning Family. It's not in the series. It's a standalone, but it is still spooky about middle schoolers, which is what I love to write about. And it's about 2 twin paranormal investigators. So they are basically ghost hunters, and they are the descendants of these grandparents who were super famous ghost hunters. And they have the gift, they can see and talk to ghosts, and their mom can't. So she is like an ultra stage mom or dance mom trying to live through her kids. And so she is pushing to get those YouTube videos out. She wants the views. She wants to subscribe. She wants all of the fame and glory. So she keeps sending her kids to these different haunts, except Gabby, one of the twins, she wants out of this weird family business. She wants nothing to do with it anymore. So she agrees to one last haunt. However, in this last haunt, which happens to be at an abandoned theater, they don't meet a friendly little ghost that they can interview for their YouTube channel. Instead, they meet a demon. So things go way wrong. And the book, like I said, is 2 points of view, but it's actually kind of 3, because I do dip in and out of the demon's point of view, which was wild to write. It was wild. So that Bananas book is going to come out next March. Fright Watch is out now, though, so that's what I'm going to read to you. And I'm not going to read you the very beginning. I'm going to read you the end of chapter 2, which might sound weird, but the reason is because a lot of times when I do school visits, students, including my own students, ask me about the covers of my books, because the covers are really cool. I had nothing to do with the covers. I am not artistic at all. I can't even draw a stick figure, but this was designed by a video game designer, which I thought was a really interesting, cool choice. And they chose him because they thought his use of lighting and color was really cool, which I agree with. And so he had to read the book, obviously, before it was a book. And the part I'm about to read to you is the part that made him say, okay, that's the cover. So that's the part I'm going to read to you. And all you need to know is that Billy is Quinn's dog. He's a little border collie. And Mike calls Quinn Parker because her last name's Parker. All right, so I'm just going to read you the little snippet that inspired the cover. We've made it to the other thing is they just came back from track practice. So they're like really kind of tired. Their legs are sore, but they're taking Billy the dog for a walk through their creepy neighborhood. We've made it to the end of the short street, past the colorful array of old houses belonging to Miss B, Mr. and Mrs. Brown, Miss Atwood, Dr. and Mrs. Smith, and Mr. Marshall. Those are all the creepy oldies across the street. We stroll all the way to the edge of the cul-de-sac, and before I think to redirect us, we end up at the pond. Both of us stop short at the curb, Billy tugging us backwards, away from the dark water. It looks kind of creepy tonight, doesn't it? I breathe. It always looks creepy, he says. We usually don't walk this way at night. Goody Pond is kind of infamous around here, ever since Mary Hove drowned way back in the 60s. Rumor has it that her ghost still haunts the waters. It's probably just some stupid urban legend, but our feet still stop short, afraid to go any closer. Billy lets out a low growl just as I see a ripple skate across the surface. Do you see that? I ask, pointing to the water. A mist forms where the ripple ended, rising up in that one spot, almost like a smoke signal. I take a step closer as Mike laughs. It's just a frog, Parker, he says, his know-it-all voice cutting through the darkness. There's like 1,000,000 in this pond. And then in a flash, his expression morphs into something more sinister, and he holds his hands out in front of him like claws. Or maybe it's a ghost, he teases. I push him away and scowl. Don't be so annoying. Can't help it, he says. Mom told me I have a gift. I turn back toward the water. For a moment, I just watch it, holding my breath as if daring the mist to rise again. Do you really think Mary Hove died in there? I ask. Nah, it's all fake. If it's so fake, I tell him, then why don't you go touch the surface? Mike stiffens. I've touched it plenty of times. So do it again. No, you go touch it. Not me. I admit I'm scared. You're the one who doesn't believe in ghosts. I don't believe in ghosts, and I'm not afraid of anything. At this, Mike pounds on his chest with his fists. We both laugh. Knew you wouldn't do it, I tell him. Not as tough as you think, huh? Oh, come on, Parker. You're always trying to prove me wrong, he says. Yeah, because you make it so easy. He makes a face. Yeah? Well, we'll see about that when I prove you wrong about the oldies. The mention of their name makes me shiver. Let's just go, I say, taking Billy's leash. My legs feel like they're going to fall off. We drag ourselves back the way we came. At the edge of the cul-de-sac, Mike pretends to dribble an imaginary basketball and toss it into an invisible hoop. But he trips over his own 2 feet and nearly stumbles to the ground. Wow, I tell him, guess you should stick with running track instead of basketball. To my surprise, he actually laughs. We've hit that point in the day when you feel so tired that every little thing becomes silly. We continue walking and giggling, drunk on our own exhaustion and the humidity. But all of a sudden, Billy stops. He cements his feet to the ground and lets out another deep growl. What's wrong, bud? I ask. Something about the street looks different. At first, I can't put my finger on what, but then it hits me. All of the oldies' houses have their front room lights on, 1 light per house and 1 face per room. Are they watching us? Mike asks. I nod. Yup. Sure enough, each neighbor's gaze follows us through their windows, their eyes hollow like skeletons, their mouths twisted and open like they're screaming. I force myself to wave even though my arm feels heavy. Mike follows my lead and waves too, but not one neighbor waves back. Do you think they see us? I whisper. I don't know, maybe not. We wave again, this time in more exaggerated motions, but the neighbors don't return the gesture. They continue to stare at us with their big eyes and gaping mouths. Billy starts to bark, and Billy never barks. Mike and I exchange looks, and we quicken our pace, not turning back until we reach my front steps. You can go in, Mike tells me. I'll wait. No, I'm fine, I tell him. Just make sure you lock your door. Go. With this, I run inside, slamming the door behind me and Billy. With shaking hands, I turn the lock, not once, but twice, just to be sure. Honey, is that you? Mom calls to me from the couch. Did I fall asleep again? I take a beat and then answer. Yeah, it's me. Billy seems to stand guard at the door, quiet now, but alert. Cautiously, I peer out the window, checking to make sure that Mike has made it across the driveway to his own house. With relief, I see that the street is empty, and the lights from the oldies' houses have once again been shut off. Peeling myself away from the glass, I finally remember to breathe. So that's the little scene that inspired this cover. You can see the oldies kind of watching them through the window. You can see them running back from the end of the cul-de-sac over there, where you can see the creepy pond peeking through. So there's a lot of foreshadowing, like little hints that are on the cover. Someone earlier today at one of my other visits asked me if the oldies are just weird or are they actually dangerous, and they're dangerous. Once Quinn and Mike start to get on their trail, then they start to show their true colors. So that's the Stitchers. I'm happy to answer any questions anybody has about that or writing or anything you want to ask in the time we have left.
Ms. Lawrence, stimulating books, and I'm glad that they're in a series because, you know, sometimes you get a really good book and you almost don't want to finish it because it's going to end. So you got the other one and the third one to jump onto. So thank you for sharing your talent with us. Stephanie has a question for you. Ask away,
Yes.
Steph.
So, when did you realize that you became an author or that you could write books? Or I don't really know how to explain it, but yeah.
Like, when did I realize I wanted to do this, or when did I realize that I could do it?
Both,
Great
but
question. Both. I realized when I was 5 or 6 that I wanted to do it. And along the way, I think a lot of people talk about just in society about teachers that said maybe not nice things to them or like bad experiences maybe they had, or teachers downing them. I was lucky enough to have the opposite. I had many teachers and librarians who were incredibly encouraging, who like saw something in me from so thank your teachers, because there are really good ones out there, and I absolutely would not be a teacher or an author without the people who like encouraged me along the way, because they saw something in me that I didn't see in myself when I was young, and just kept encouraging me to tell my wacky little monster stories. And that's what I did, and I kind of never looked back. The thing about being an author is there's so much rejection. It took me 10 straight years of querying to try to get a literary agent, which is kind of like a business manager that you need in order to be traditionally published. 10 straight years of just getting rejection after rejection after rejection. But there were just so many encouraging people that were like, no, maybe not yet. So I think like changing my mindset, again, like having really good teachers and mentors who were like, it's not a never, it's a just not yet, keep going. I think that really helped me realize that it would happen. And usually I think people tend to think the transition between writer to author happens when you sign with a literary agent, because they're the ones that jumpstart your career. So for me, it was like, I want to say 30 years, which sounds wild, but I was 6 when I wrote my first story that I remember, and then I was like 36 when I got published. So it's been a journey.
Ms. Lawrence, in the interesting facts, it says that you pitched your first novel at 8 years old to James Howe. What was the title, or what was the subject?
It was called Campsite Fright. So that was when my teacher, like, we still wrote like actual letters to authors. And my teacher at the time was like, yep, we're writing letters, write to your favorite author. And like most people, Benicula, that series with Chester and Harold, the dogs or whatever, like that was pretty big. And this was the 90s, and it was pretty big at the time. So most of my class was writing to James Howe. And so I wrote to him, but most people were like, I love your books, which is very sweet. Like I love getting those kinds of letters. I took it to an embarrassing level where I was like, hey, I have an idea for like your next Chester and Harold book, and it's called Campsite Fright, and they're at a campsite. And I remember it was like aliens. And I wrote like a whole pitch in like an outline for him, and was like, you're welcome. This is your next book. And so to everyone else in my class who wrote to him, he just put like he just signed his name to like a letter that was typed the same one to every person. And I was the only one, humble brag, that got like a personalized like a packet, like a whole manila envelope full of like just his encouraging words. Like again, like it's those things that stay with you that encourage you. But he was someone who like saw that I guess I like had this wacky idea, but sent it to him, that he just was very encouraging for me to become a writer. So yeah, it was called Campsite Fright.
In fruition, right? Amazing.
Yeah.
A question on that side, Miss
Yes,
Ada?
we have some more questions. We have Lucy on this side over here. Go ahead, Lucy.
Um, please give me a second. I got nervous. Were you always good at writing?
I still don't know if I'm good at writing, if I'm honest with you. I think I've always had something where people saw something in me. I've had teachers in the past say that I have like a rhythm in my storytelling that is hard to teach, and that especially with my scary books, I tend to get a nice compliment that I'm good at balancing scary things with heartfelt things. I don't know when I'll decide or accept if I'm good or not. I think that's the thing about being, any kind of artist, is you're always just trying to get better. So I think I have good qualities to my writing, and I'm really proud of what I've been able to do. And I do work incredibly hard at what I do. I think each book gets better and better, and I think I just keep getting better. And it's still hard to like reread my stuff, if I'm honest, because I think also a lot of artists tend to be perfectionists. So when I go back, if I were to, I've never reread the whole of the Stitcher since it's come out in book form, because I think if I, even reading that little snippet to you, I can think of a million things I would like to change and make better, and you can't because it's already out there into the world. So I think at a very young age, probably around 6, I had teachers encouraging me and telling me that I had something special. I'll let you know when I start to feel that way.
Well, we think you're great. And
Thank you.
Miss Addison has a question for you.
What gave you the inspiration to make these stories?
For these stories, for the Fright Watch ones,
Yes.
or these stories,
Or all
any stories? I'm inspired a lot by where I live, because Connecticut is like old and everything's allegedly haunted, and there's so many urban legends and folklore that I love, that I'm inspired by. So I weave those into like all my books. There's the ladies in white that I was talking about in this book. It's named Goody Pond and Goody Lane because in Stratford, where I grew up, where South Haven is based on, it's there's a witch named Goody Bassett that allegedly haunts the town. There's allegedly a sea creature that is in Long Island Sound, like by where I live. So I'm just so inspired by my own backyard, so to speak, and that tends to go into my books. And I also, so whatever supernatural element I have in my stories, I try to pair it with like something very human. So for the Stitchers and the Collectors, it's Quinn's grief. She loses her dad. I wrote the Stitchers in 2012, right after I lost my dad, and I just needed a place for that grief to go, and that went into this book. So like her dealing with this supernatural element but with grieving her dad was really important for me to try to balance the two. So I guess my own life inspired bits of it, even though I'm nothing like Quinn. Quinn is way braver than I ever was. I'm much more like Marion, using her art to help deal with some symptoms of anxiety, etc. But I'm really inspired by where I live and like maybe little elements of things that have happened to me. But I've obviously never battled a sea monster or a ghost. So
I believe we have time for one more question, and we have Owen over here on this side with a question for you.
How you come up with the idea for that book?
How do I come up with it for? I just didn't hear the last part.
How you come up with that idea for that book?
For one of these books?
Yes.
this is gonna sound bad, but the villain in the Stitchers, Miss B, like the leader of the oldies, she's based on my grandma. So like from the way that she looks, the way that she dresses, into her obsession with being beautiful and young, that was my grandma. Like giant, I don't think students will know what a beehive hairdo is, do you? But it's like this big elaborate updo thing. Like that was my grandma with all the makeup, the fancy dress, all of that. Since I was tiny, one of the only things she would tell me was, don't ever get old, Lorien. Don't ever get old. It's awful. And I still don't know. I never knew how old she was, because starting when I was like 4, she would tell everybody she was 80, even when she was in her 60s. And then when she actually turned 80, then she would say she was like, she always lied about her age because she hated it so much. And I've always been fascinated, because I teach 7th grade, where a lot of times my students want to grow up quicker. So it was kind of like those two things of like students wanting to grow up too fast. And then here's my grandma like obsessed with looking, and it's not just my grandma, it's society, right? Like wanting, especially women, to look young and be young and beautiful forever and all of that. I was really interested in that. So that kind of motif of like being young and staying young, and that you would have to read the Stitchers to see why, but that really inspired a big plot of the book. So yeah, my grandma.
Around here in this culture, we have this saying that, you know, when you're in trouble, your grandma breaks out the chancla, which is like your sandal, because they
Oh yeah, no, here it was the wooden spoon. But I don't condone that. Yeah, she likes me now.
So we're thinking if grandma ever sees this video, you might get the chancla.
I think she would actually love it, to be honest, because she loves being talked about.
Well, Lorien, we're out of time, but we want to thank you so much for sharing your books with us and taking time out of your day to visit with us. And before we go, we would like to do our Raider wave for you.
Yay, I'm so excited.
All right. And it starts off with this pretty young lady here and this handsome young man. You guys ready? On 3. 1, 2, 3. All right, yes, Ms. Lawrence, thank you so much for sharing of yourself, of your stories. Such interesting stuff. Definitely going to read those books. We have them in our library for the kids to check out. So thank you so very much. What a blessing.
Thank you. It was so lovely to meet you all. If you have any follow-up questions, you can shoot them over to me. But I really appreciate you taking the time and being so engaged. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day. Bye.
You too. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.